As I mentioned when we kicked off the bulletin, the reality of so many young people in the country today, that's about 60% of the population aged between 18 and 35, meaning in the next few years this will be the retired population, and 93% are actually not ready and have not saved anything for retirement. So where do you stand today, and what can you do to ensure that when you retire, you'll have something to live on? And of course, this forms the basis of the discussion on the big picture tonight with our panel, Sandeep Raichura, the CEO of Alexander Forbes. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And Simon Wafubwa, the MD of Liberty Pension Services. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for joining us. Simon, let's just kick off with you. 7% of the population claim they are able to support themselves once they retire. Why are Kenyans not saving?
I think it's a couple of factors that are contributing to us. That one is the ability to contribute, because you realize that we have a lot of competing needs to the few financial resources at our exposure. One of them, of course, to the fact that inflation has been one of the key concerns within the country. And then, of course, the challenge of unemployment. That's another factor. That disposable income is another factor, is not quite adequate to enable Kenyans to save for retirement.
Sandeep, of course, and this brings in the question of the NSSF Act, with many Kenyans asking, you know, we are already contributing so much to so many things.
Yes.
Why is it so important for us to contribute to the NSSF Act as it is?
Absolutely. I mean, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, I mean, very few of us save for our future retirement. I mean, for most Kenyans, as Simon said, saving for retirement is actually an afterthought. So unless we are compelled to save, very few people will make the effort to save themselves. For most Kenyans, retirement is somewhere far in the distant. And as Simon said, there are so many competing priorities that we face. Obviously, the pressure on disposable incomes. Now, therefore, we need a piece of legislation that would compel us to save. And for a lot of Kenyans who feel that saving for the NSSF or saving to a pension scheme is a tax, I think one should say that, look, it's not a tax, it's actually a saving. And I think we need to break out of this successive cycle of, you know, the cycle of Kenyans, many generations of Kenyans not saving for their future. So I think having some level of compulsion makes sense. And we should support that.
All right. Of course, we'll come into the nitty-gritty of what exactly makes, you know, the new fund and what we as employers and employees need to keep in mind as we do that. Let's keep the conversation going, and just looking at some of the key issues that are standing out from the NSSF Act. Employees registered with a fund will pay 6% of their gross earnings every month, equal to 6 shillings for every 100 shillings they earn, as opposed to the current monthly 200 shillings per employee. And some of the questions we're getting is, for instance, if I earn 20,000 shillings, how much will I expect to be cut off from my payslip? Sandeep.
Okay, if somebody is earning a salary of 20,000 shillings, in the first year, the contributions are capped on earnings up to 18,000 shillings. So in the first year, the contributions will be at 6% of 18,000. And that translates to 1,080 shillings. So the 200 shillings that is currently paid to the NSSF will increase to 1,080. In the second year, there is a progressive increase in that ceiling on contributions. So in the second year, the individual will, assuming the salary has remained at 20,000, the individual will contribute 1,200 shillings. That's 6% of 20,000. Now, obviously, these amounts will be matched by the employer. So the total amount that would go to one's account in the first year is 2,160, and in the second year 2,400.
That's per month?
Per month.
Per month.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a question from Thomas Odhiambo in Nairobi, which I'd like to address to you, Simon. And he says, what will happen to our former contributions, and why are some companies already starting to implement the new rates before its inception?
I think it's important to appreciate the fact that the Act came into commencement with the effect on 4th of January. However, it was postponed in terms of implementation to 31st of May 2014. So I would say that it wasn't quite appropriate for an institution to start implementing the Act, yet it hasn't actually been enforced. Number two, in terms of what will happen to the previous contribution, The Act did provide for transitional mechanisms. The previous contributions that the members have made to NSSF, they are allowed the option to either transfer them to the new pension trust arrangement, and I think there are transitional mechanisms up to year 5 that has been provided within the legislative framework. For companies that already have been running their private sector pension schemes, I think their pension schemes will continue to run as it were. However, also the Act has provided for opt-out of Tier 2 contributions to be made to their occupational pension arrangements. Of course, subject to obtaining the approval of the regulator, and as of now, the opt-out regulations, I'm sure they are being worked on by the regulator, the RBA, together with the NSSF, and we are expecting them anytime in the industry.
Just to add to what Simon has said, for the benefits in the old Provident Fund, they will remain in the old Provident Fund for at least the next 5 years.
Yes.
Okay, so the assets of the old Provident Fund are going to be kept as they are, and when somebody leaves or retires, they will receive a benefit from the new pension fund as well as the accumulated amount in the old Provident Fund. And the amount in the old Provident Fund is not frozen, it will continue to earn interest. So I think that's an important clarification.
Let's give us a brief understanding of that transition the NSSF will take. That's from a provident fund to a pension fund. Why should I, as a regular Kenyan, care about that transition?
Okay, the change of the NSSF from a provident fund to a pension scheme is a very fundamental change in the way the NSSF will operate. Okay, there are 3 key implications. Firstly, whereas previously the benefits were paid in the form of a lump sum when somebody retires or leaves, going forward the benefits under the new pension fund will be paid in the form of a regular income or a pension. Secondly, the level of contributions to the new pension fund are much higher than those that previously applied, so that you have a meaningful level of saving which can translate to a meaningful level of benefit. And thirdly, as Simon mentioned, the Act also provides that if an employer has an existing pension scheme and wishes to opt out, it can opt out of making the second tier of contributions to the NSSF. So that flexibility and option is also there.
Yeah, possibly also the concern of the member in terms of these changes. Firstly is that they are used to contributing 200 per month.
Yes.
At Tier 1, effective June, if the Act is placed into commencement, they will be contributing at 360, meaning they need to plan for it. At the employer level, of course, there will be a cost implication because the contributions are going to go up, and therefore they need to plan. Payroll system administration will need to be adjusted, of course, to reflect the same changes.
Yes.
And then at the same time, of course, education and awareness to the members is required so that they are able to understand and appreciate the new legislative framework in terms of its impact on their pay structure. Of course, the other aspect of it is that the benefits, as Sandeep has mentioned, they also need to appreciate that the benefit structure is changing, possibly for a higher benefit because of the contribution that they are going to make. Yes.
I think the other important point, sorry if I may add, is that for those employers who don't have a pension scheme, yes, there will be a cost implication for them, but that cost implication is going to be spread over 5 years because the contributions are being phased in over a period of 5 years. Now, those employers who have existing schemes, if they exercise the option to opt out, the impact on them could be neutral, right? If they structure the scheme in such a way, apply to contract out of making contributions to the NSSF, the impact for them will actually be zero, right? And it's important to appreciate.
And there's been quite a bit of resistance, however. So what happens to people who say, I will not pay it? What happens?
I mean, there are very stiff penalties in the Act for non-compliance. I mean, the contributions under the NSSF are mandatory. They are statutory contributions. Every employer in this country is required to register and register its employees and ensure that contributions are deducted and paid both by itself as well as on behalf of the employees. I mean, there are penalties, and for example, if contributions are delayed by more than a month, there's a penalty of 5% of those contributions. There are fines, there are sanctions for non-compliance. So Yeah, I mean, the Act does prescribe some stiff penalties.
I'd like to find out, will the contributions earn any interest? Given that, with such a big pool of funds within the NSSF, where will they be investing? Does that mean I will, manage to take home part of the interest that they'll get from whatever it is they invest the money in?
Of course, the Act has provided that the new NSSF Act is subject to the RBA Act, which has guidelines in terms of how pension scheme assets are required to be invested, and therefore out of the investments in different asset classes like equities, the government securities, property, we do expect a return for the members. And of course, this return is declared by the NSSF, credited to the members' accounts. So the members are expected to be receiving an annual statement which reflects the accumulative balance plus the contribution they have made plus the interest of obviously which forms the benefits payable to them.
How about those in self-employment? Because the NSSF, as we have known it, has not really focused much on those who are self-employed. How about the new Act?
Okay, those who are self-employed have two choices. I mean, they can register with the NSSF and contribute to the voluntary provident fund, because there's a new provident fund that has been set up as well. Or alternatively, those in the self-employment can participate in an individual retirement benefit plan. I mean, this is a plan that they can choose by themselves and contribute to. And there are several individual personal pension plan options available in Kenya.
All right, so we are ending it on that note. Thank you so much for shining light on this topic, with many Kenyans, of course, asking all these questions that we are asking. What does this really mean to me as an employee, as an employer, and as somebody who's getting old within the next few years? Sandeep Praichura, CEO of Alexander Forbes, Simon Wafuba, the MD of Liberty Pension Services, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.